Well, for more on all that, I'm joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Dr. Laskiewicz, great to see you again. So President Zelensky in Washington today, meeting President Trump for a third time. But it seems as if he's been thrown a curveball after Mr. Trump also announced that he'll be meeting Russia's President Vladimir Putin in Hungary for more talks on ending the war. What's the lowdown, first of all, on that phone call between Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin?
Well, the key point about it is, of course, that it occurred at all. The timing was absolutely spot on, just before President Trump definitely meets President Zelensky. And so it is a way, if you like, of stymieing their talks, because President Donald Trump is unlikely to supply Tomahawk missiles until he's met with President Putin. So that's another 2 weeks for Russia, bought of time. And after, of course, the meeting with Budapest, there'll be something or other. And so we can see that it's heading towards 1 month before any decision is made about Tomahawks, which is precisely what President Zelensky did not want. So, of course, when he came over to see President Donald Trump, he was certain he was on a winner, that President Donald Trump was annoyed with Russia and would supply him with Tomahawks. It seems that President Putin has outmaneuvered him on this diplomatic front.
And Mr. Zelensky will probably be reflecting, one imagines, on that phone call as he meets Mr. Trump at the White House. What can we expect from that meeting? I mean, some apprehension perhaps from Mr. Zelensky?
I think the meeting in the end won't be very productive, but it will be very pleasant. And that is already a step in President Zelensky's favor. But I doubt anything concrete will come out of it, precisely because of the phone call by President Putin in the nick of time. However, even so, I stress the fact that this meeting, that President Zelensky is meeting President Trump, is very good for Zelensky in the sense the more dialogue, the more he can present his case to President Donald Trump, the more chance there is that President Donald Trump will be more on his side. And indeed, President Donald Trump gave a very strange comment. He said there'll be a meeting of equals, implying that President Zelensky and President Putin are in some way equals. That is precisely what President Putin doesn't want to hear. President Putin wants to hear that he is a head of a superpower, the equal of America. Yes, but not of Ukraine.
Indeed. And you mentioned, of course, that one deal that President Zelensky is pretty keen on as he visits the White House is getting hold of some U.S. Tomahawk missiles. I mean, what exactly are they, and what might be the military implications if a decision is made to deploy them against Russia? Might that escalate the war further?
Well, it would do. It would certainly escalate the war because Ukraine would have the opportunity to strike deep in Russia. Secondly, the very fact not only have they been supplied with such missiles, but will have permission to use them, is already a further step showing that America is supporting Ukraine more, and indeed a step further than Biden ever went. So from that point of view, President Trump, were he to supply Tomahawks, would certainly have even overtaken President Biden in his usefulness to Ukraine. However, is he likely to get them? Well, it would appear not. But even so, the fact he suggested this does just simply show how volatile President Donald Trump is. In fact, right now, as we speak, it's one of the most interesting aspects that we actually have no idea, in effect, on whose side he is really, because there he is promising Tomahawks, or at least considering Tomahawks, with President Zelensky. And at the same time, he's actually going to meet President Putin again, recalling Alaska, where they walked almost arm in arm in front of the world media. So it's interesting, but I think if they were to be supplied, it would be an escalation, but I don't think that's going to happen immediately.
It's very interesting, your assessment there, and it raises the question whether all this is pointing to any sort of meaningful diplomacy to end the war. I mean, I wonder how much you think all this reflects Mr. Trump's continuing focus and hopes for his personal diplomacy of threats and bluster as the way to make a deal to end the conflict.
Yes, I think that actually is accurate. Quite clearly, President Donald Trump has this vision of being the peacemaker in the world. He's already claimed credit for 7 wars, probably more soon to come. And the point is that he sees himself as this peacemaker, this is his role, and that therefore he would like to force President Putin and President Zelensky to the negotiating table to agree a peace. But they're really very far apart. And the interesting aspect of the call is what no one has stated. Did President Putin offer some sort of territorial concessions? This is the interesting one. And President Donald Trump and indeed President Putin have said nothing on this subject. Without territorial concessions, nothing is going to go ahead. And indeed, even with them, it would be very hard because President Zelensky was the Russian out of all pre-2014 Ukrainian territory. So quite what the talks in Budapest can achieve is unclear and looks unlikely. Moreover, President Putin is showing no signs of backing down, no signs that he's trying to stay off the war or move off the war, despite all the comments made in the Western media that Russia's on its last legs. This certainly isn't what President Putin is projecting.
So, I mean, you're not getting any sense at all that Mr. Putin is shifting his position. Is there still that feeling, I mean, which the Ukrainians seem to think, that he's just playing for time?
I would personally go with that analysis that he's playing for time, yes. What he would like, I think, is during the period before the talks with President Donald Trump, a nice success. A capture of a Ukrainian town, something like that. The 2 weeks gives him more opportunity to do that. Moreover, please remember, he has in his time threatened Poland, the Baltic states. He's moved troops near the Finnish border. Who knows quite what he has in mind? So basically, I do not see that the talks in Budapest will come to a lasting peace settlement, but the fact they're talking at all has got one good point to it. Better to talk at least something and have some sort of communication than to have 2 armed camps, each armed with nuclear missiles.
So, boosted by the Gaza deal, can Mr. Trump get, in his own words, Russia and Ukraine done? I mean, in summary, I'm wondering how positive we should be feeling about the prospects of this meeting between the 2 leaders in Hungary, considering that we've been here before, as you mentioned, with that red carpet rollout in Alaska, and it didn't seem to achieve anything. I mean, I don't mean to make you repeat yourself, but in sort of summary is what I'm looking for.
In summary, I do not believe there's a ceasefire on the cards immediately, nor a peace treaty between Russia and Ukraine, nor is it likely that President Donald Trump will succeed in the short term in forcing one. Moreover, the situation in Gaza is scarcely a resounding success at present, with the public executions and Israel threatening to go bombing again. And so therefore, we are a far cry from a president who has had a stunning success moving on to another stunning success. Rather, he has had a partial success in Israel. Please note, President Biden called it a renewal of the ceasefire, which is a very interesting and accurate comment. And in the Ukraine and Russia, there's no ceasefire in the offing as we talk now.
Dr. Laskiewicz, we appreciate your assessment as always. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the author and international affairs analyst talking to me on the line from London.